There is a poison that the people-pleaser drinks every single day. It is a slow-acting toxin, so familiar that you may no longer even recognize its taste. It is the emotional sludge left over from 1,000 swallowed no's. It is the ghost of every boundary you failed to set. It is called resentment. It is the bitter feeling you get when you are, once again, the last one to leave the office. The cold knot in your stomach when you agree to host a holiday you don't have the energy for. The quiet, internal eye roll when a friend asks for yet another favor. You push it down. You tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way. You put on your smiling persona and say, "Of course, I'm happy to help." But the poison remains, accumulating in your system, drop by silent drop. Carl Jung understood that what we do not consciously process will come back to haunt us, and resentment is the primary ghost that haunts the good girl. It is not a sign that you are a bad or ungrateful person. It is a mathematical certainty. It is the inevitable result of an equation where you are constantly giving more energy than you are authentically willing to offer. The deficit that is created is resentment. Today, we are not here to judge this feeling. We are here to dissect it, to understand its anatomy, its purpose, and the secret message it holds for your healing. Because buried within your resentment is the blueprint for your own freedom. It is time to learn how to read it. To understand how to work with resentment, we must first look it squarely in the face. We must understand its anatomy. Resentment is not a primary emotion, like anger or sadness. It's a complex emotional cocktail, a mixture of unprocessed anger, a sense of injustice, and a feeling of powerlessness. Let's break down this toxic recipe. The first ingredient is always unexpressed anger. As we've explored, anger is the energy of a boundary being crossed. It is a biological no. When you consistently override this no with a verbal yes, the anger doesn't disappear. It gets pushed down. It becomes the foundational layer of resentment. Every yes that feels like a betrayal to your soul adds another layer to this foundation. Yes, I can stay late, even though you are exhausted. Yes, I can lend you money again, even though you were worried about your own finances. Yes, your opinion is valid, even though it feels like a dismissal of your own experience. Each of these is a moment where your boundary was crossed and your anger was suppressed. The second ingredient is a pervasive sense of injustice. This is the story your mind creates to make sense of the bad feeling created by the suppressed anger. The story usually sounds something like this. It's not fair. I always give so much, and nobody ever gives back. They take me for granted. They don't appreciate anything I do. Why am I the only one who has to be responsible? This story often contains a kernel of truth. The dynamic is often unfair. But resentment gets its power by focusing exclusively on the other person's behavior. It creates a narrative where you are the righteous victim, and they are the selfish villain. This story feels validating. It feels good, in a strange, self-righteous way. It gives you a sense of moral superiority. But it is a trap. Because as long as the focus is on how unfair they are, you never have to look at your own role in creating the situation. You never have to look at the yes that you yourself offered up. This leads to the third and most crucial ingredient, a profound feeling of powerlessness. This is the hidden engine of resentment. Because you have suppressed your anger, the very energy designed to empower you to set a boundary, you are left feeling helpless to change the situation. You feel trapped. You believe the other person holds all the power because they are allowed to be selfish while you are not. You see no way out other than to hope that they will suddenly change, that they will suddenly wake up and realize how much you do for them. This is a fantasy, a child's fantasy. It is the fantasy of a helpless child hoping a powerful parent will finally see them and meet their needs. As an adult, this fantasy keeps you stuck in a cycle of waiting, hoping, and seething. Let's look at this entire cycle in action. Consider Michael, the workaholic perfectionist we met, who learned that his worth was tied to his performance. His boss, let's call him Frank, is a classic delegator. He piles work on Michael's desk at 5:55 p.m. on a Friday. Step 1. The boundary crossing and suppressed anger. Michael has plans with his family. He feels a hot flash of anger. His boundary, his personal time, is being violated, but his good girl, or in this case good boy, programming kicks in. The fear of not being seen as a dedicated employee is stronger than his anger. He swallows the anger and says, "No problem, Frank, I'll get it done." Step 2. The story of injustice. On Saturday, as Michael sits at his desk while his family is at the park, the resentment begins to brew. He replays the scene in his mind. The story begins, "This is so unfair. Frank always does this. He takes me for granted. They don't appreciate anything I do. Why am I the only one who has to be responsible?" This story makes him feel morally superior to Frank and his lazy colleagues. It validates his bad feeling. Step 3. The feeling of powerlessness. He feels trapped. He thinks, "I can't say no. If I do, I might get a bad review. I might not get that promotion. I am powerless in this situation. My only hope is that Frank will recognize my hard work and reward me one day." This is a fantasy. He feels like a victim of his boss's unreasonable demands. The self-perpetuating loop. Because Michael feels powerless, he does not address the issue directly with Frank. The next time Frank gives him last-minute work, Michael once again says yes. This new yes adds another layer of suppressed anger. This new anger fuels a more intense story of injustice. This more intense story reinforces his feeling of powerlessness. The cycle continues. The resentment builds. It becomes a thick, toxic filter through which he views his entire job. He starts to hate his work. He becomes cynical. His health suffers. His relationships at home become strained because he is always irritable. The resentment that started with a single boundary crossing has now become the defining emotional state of his life. This is the prison of resentment. It is a cell constructed from your own unexpressed power. It keeps you locked in a painful story where you are always right, but you are never free. It feels like you are holding the other person accountable, but you are actually only poisoning yourself. The way out is not to convince the other person that they are wrong. The way out is to reclaim the power you gave away with your first yes. Pause here and reflect. What is a reoccurring story of injustice you tell yourself in your life? In that story, who is the villain? And what makes you the victim? And most importantly, what unexpressed no is at the very root of that story? This is the beginning of dismantling the prison, brick by resentful brick. We have seen how resentment is a prison, a self-perpetuating cycle of suppressed anger, a story of injustice, and a feeling of powerlessness. The natural impulse, upon seeing this clearly, is to want to get rid of it, to declare, "I will no longer be resentful." But this is a trap. You cannot fight resentment with willpower alone. Trying to simply stop being resentful is like trying to fix a leaky pipe by yelling at the puddle on the floor. You are ignoring the source of the leak. The next step in this work is not to fight the resentment, but to befriend it, to turn toward it with curiosity, to understand that your resentment, as painful as it is not your enemy. It is a messenger, a loyal, persistent, and incredibly frustrated messenger from your own soul. It is carrying a message for you, a message you have been ignoring for a very long time. And the message is always about one of two things: an unmet need or a crossed boundary. Your resentment is a map, and on that map, X marks the spot of your own self-betrayal. The work is to learn how to read that map. Let's begin by decoding the message of an unmet need. Every human being has legitimate core needs: the need for rest, the need for play, the need for connection, the need for solitude, the need for creative expression, the need to be seen and valued. The good girl archetype, the people pleaser, has been taught that her needs are secondary, that they are selfish or inconvenient. So she learns to suppress them. She pretends they don't exist. But they do. And when they go unmet for too long, the soul begins to protest. And that protest often takes the form of resentment. Consider Jessica, the introverted woman who craves solitude but is constantly saying yes to social invitations from her extroverted friends. She goes to another loud party, smiling and making small talk, while inside she feels drained and irritable. Later, she feels a wave of resentment towards her friends. The story in her head is, "They are so demanding. They never consider what I might want to do." This is the surface-level story. But if we use resentment as a map, we can look deeper. Her resentment is not truly about her friends. It is a message from her own soul. And the message is, "My need for solitude and quiet is being starved. I'm desperately in need of restorative time alone." Her friends are not the villains. They are simply living their own authentic lives. The true source of the pain is Jessica's own repeated betrayal of her fundamental need as an introvert. The resentment is the alarm bell, signaling a deep internal deficit. Here's a practice for you. The next time you feel that familiar sting of resentment, pause. Take out your journal and ask the resentment this question: what core need of mine is not being met in this situation? Don't think about the other person. Focus only on yourself. Is it your need for rest, for respect, for appreciation, for autonomy, for peace? Just naming the unmet need is a powerful act of self-validation. It shifts the focus from "they are so unfair" to "I have a need that deserves to be honored." You are beginning to take responsibility for your own container. The second message your resentment carries is about a crossed boundary. A boundary is not a wall you build to keep people out. It is a line you draw to define where you end and another person begins. It is a declaration of what is okay with you and what is not okay with you. It is essential for healthy relationships and self-respect. The people pleaser, however, has very porous or non-existent boundaries. The fear of conflict or disapproval is so great that she allows her lines to be crossed time and time again. And the anger from these violations, when suppressed, becomes resentment. Let's go back to Michael, who keeps saying yes to his boss Frank's last-minute Friday requests. His resentment towards Frank is thick and palpable. The story is, Frank is a disrespectful tyrant. But the resentment is a map, and it is pointing directly to a crossed boundary. The boundary is his personal protected family time on the weekend. Every time he says yes, he is allowing Frank to cross that line.
He is giving away his power. The resentment is a direct message from his soul. A critical boundary is being violated. You must protect this space. The power to do so is yours. The resentment is not a sign of Michael's weakness. It is a sign of his strength calling to be used. It is the voice of his inner protector begging to be let out of its cage. Here's the second practice. When you feel resentment, ask yourself and your journal, what boundary of mine was just crossed or ignored in this situation? What was the no that I failed to say? Be very specific. Was it a boundary around your time, your energy, your finances, your emotional space, your values? For example, my boundary around not discussing politics at the dinner table was just crossed. Or my boundary around not lending money to family was just crossed. Or my boundary around needing my partner to help with childcare in the evenings was just crossed. Identifying the specific boundary is like turning on a light in a dark room. It moves you out of the vague, powerless feeling of "this is unfair" into the clear, empowered seeing of "this is the line that was crossed, and I am the one responsible for guarding it." By decoding your resentment in this way, by seeing it as a messenger of your unmet needs and your crossed boundaries, you begin to alchemize it. You are no longer a passive victim of your bad feelings. You are an active participant in your own healing. You are using your resentment as a diagnostic tool, a compass. It is no longer a poison you are forced to drink. It is a powerful medicine telling you exactly where your life is out of alignment. It is showing you precisely where your next act of courage is required. It is showing you the path back to honoring yourself. And by doing so, you are not just alleviating a negative feeling. You are beginning the sacred work of reclaiming your own life.
We have decoded the message. Your resentment is a map pointing directly to your unmet needs and your violated boundaries. This is a profound realization, but it brings us to a terrifying and paradoxical question. If resentment feels so terrible, if it is a poison we drink every day, why is it so difficult to let go of? Why do we cling to our stories of injustice, replaying them in our minds on a loop, even when we know they are destroying us? The answer is complex, and it lies deep in the logic of the psyche. We hold on to our resentment because on some unconscious level, it serves a purpose. It has a job. And to release it, we must first understand what that job is. The first reason we cling to resentment is that it feels safer than the anger underneath it. For the people pleaser, whose nervous system is conditioned to see anger as a life-threatening danger, direct anger is terrifying. Resentment feels like a more manageable, more ladylike alternative. It is a lower wattage version of rage. It allows you to feel the rightness of your anger without having to take the risk of actually expressing it. To let go of the resentment would mean you would have to feel the pure, hot, clean energy of your anger, and that feels like touching a live wire. So you hold on to the resentment, the cold sludge, because it feels less dangerous than the fire itself. The second reason is that resentment provides a sense of identity and moral superiority. The good girl archetype has a fragile sense of self, one that is built on being good, helpful, and self-sacrificing. The story of resentment, "I am the good one who gives, and they are the bad ones who take," is a powerful way to reinforce this identity. It makes you the martyr, the long-suffering saint. This role, while painful, is also familiar. It feels like you. To let go of the resentment would mean letting go of this identity. It would mean you would have to stop being the victim in your own story. And if you are not the victim, then you must be a co-creator of your own reality. You must take responsibility for your own choices, for your own yeses. And that can be a far more frightening prospect than simply blaming someone else. The third and deepest reason is that resentment allows you to avoid the grief of your own self-betrayal. Every time you say yes when your soul screams no, it is a small act of abandoning yourself. And these thousands of small abandonments accumulate into a vast, unacknowledged grief. The grief for the life you could be living if you honored yourself. The grief for the boundaries you never set. The grief for the needs you never valued. This grief is immense. It is heartbreaking, and the story of resentment acts as a powerful shield against it. As long as you can stay focused on how unfair they are, you never have to feel the profound sadness of how unfair you have been to yourself. The anger of resentment is often a defense against the deep underlying sorrow. So, how do we begin the delicate work of letting go? It is not a single act of forgiveness. It is a process. It begins with the willingness to feel what lies beneath the resentment. Step 1. Acknowledge and validate the anger. Before you can release the anger, you must first fully own it. In your journal, give your anger a voice. Write an unsent letter to the person or situation you feel resentful towards. Do not hold back. Let it all out. The petty thoughts, the furious accusations, the raw rage. I am angry that you. It was not fair when. This is not for them. This is for you. You are giving the suppressed energy a safe outlet on the page. You are validating the part of you that has been silenced. You are honoring the truth of your experience. Often, the simple act of fully expressing the anger on paper can dissipate a huge amount of its charge. Step 2. Feel the grief. Once the heat of the anger has been expressed, ask yourself a gentle question. What is the sadness underneath this anger? What am I grieving in this situation? Allow yourself to feel the sadness of your own self-abandonment. The sadness that you didn't protect yourself, that you didn't value your own needs. Let the tears come if they need to. Grief is like water. It cleanses. It washes away the toxic residue of resentment. You cannot bypass this step. You must grieve the choices of the past to be free to make new ones in the present. Step 3. Reclaim your power. This is the final alchemical step. Once you have honored your anger and grieved your sadness, you can look at the situation with new eyes. You move from the powerless question, why did they do this to me, to the empowered question, what is this situation teaching me? What boundary do I need to set now? What need of my own do I need to honor? This is where you shift from being the victim in your own story to being the author of your next chapter. Let's go back to Michael, resentful about working on the weekend. Step 1. He writes a furious, unsent letter to his boss Frank, detailing all his anger and frustration. Step 2. He then asks, what's the sadness here? He realizes he is grieving the loss of his family time and grieving the fact that he values his boss's approval more than his own well-being. He feels the ache of that truth. Now, with a clearer head, he asks, what is my next empowered step? He realizes he cannot change Frank, but he can change his own response. He decides that the next time Frank makes a Friday afternoon request, he will use the phrase, let me check my calendar, and I will get back to you on Monday morning. This is a small, manageable, empowered choice. He is not confronting Frank, he is honoring himself. He is taking his power back. This is the path out of the prison of resentment. It is a journey through your own emotional landscape. You must be willing to feel your anger, to grieve your sadness, and to finally, courageously reclaim your power to choose differently. It is the process of turning the poison you have been drinking back into the medicine of your own sovereign life. We have walked into the heart of one of the shadow's most toxic territories, the land of resentment. We have seen it not as a simple feeling, but as a complex prison, built from the bricks of suppressed anger, the mortar of an unjust story, and the bars of our own perceived powerlessness. We learned that we cling to this prison because it feels safer than our rage, because it gives us a righteous identity, and because it shields us from the profound grief of our own self-betrayal. But most importantly, we have discovered that resentment is not a life sentence. It is a messenger, a loyal, frustrated, and persistent messenger, carrying a map that points directly to our unmet needs and our violated boundaries. And we have outlined the alchemical process to transform this poison into medicine, to fully acknowledge the anger, to feel the grief underneath it, and to finally reclaim our power by asking the question, what is my next empowered step? This is a profound reorientation. It is the shift from being a passive victim of your circumstances to becoming the active author of your life. It is understanding that true power does not lie in trying to change other people. True power lies in your ability to change your own response. It lies in the space between a trigger and your action. It lies in the courage to say no. It lies in the wisdom to honor your needs. It lies in the strength to guard your own boundaries. This work is not about becoming a person who never feels resentment again. That is an unrealistic goal. The work is about shortening the lifespan of your resentment. It is about learning to decode its message quickly, so that it no longer has to fester for days or weeks or years. It's the difference between letting a toxic substance sit in your system, poisoning you from the inside out, and learning to see it as a signal, to metabolize its message, and then to let it go. This is how you reclaim your life force. This is how you begin to live in a state of clean, authentic energy, rather than in the murky swamp of unspoken grievances. As you continue your shadow work journey, as you practice with your journal and observe your projections, you will find that your waking life becomes richer with information. Your triggers become your teachers. Your resentment becomes your compass. But there is another world, another vast and mysterious source of information about your shadow that we have only briefly mentioned. It is the world you enter every night when you close your eyes, the world of dreams. Jung believed that dreams are a direct communication from the unconscious. They are the psyche's attempt to bring balance, to reveal what is hidden, to show us the parts of ourselves we have neglected. Your shadow is alive and well in your dreams. It speaks in a language of symbols, of bizarre scenarios, of potent feelings. And your dreams are constantly trying to tell you what you are hiding from yourself. They are trying to show you your unexpressed anger, your disowned power, your deepest longings. So, how do we begin to understand this symbolic language? How do we learn to listen to the wisdom that arises from us in the dark? Exploring the landscape of your dreams and what your shadow is trying to tell you through them is the next great adventure on our path, and it is where we will journey together next.